What's your most akward sorry, but I don't work here experience? Story 1. I was at a local thrift store, looking at old typewriters with my sister. They were very cheap and she's a writer, so I was buying her one. There was a fellow there who heard me ask out loud a question about how it works. He was a nice old guy who came over and showed me the inner workings of the unit for a solid 50-60 minutes. He was very passionate about typewriters and had expert-level knowledge. After an hour of him showing me everything you could imagine with a typewriter and how they work, I asked a question about price. He responds with, well, I don't know that because I don't work here, I just like typewriters. Story 2. I used to work in a bar that was about a 5-minute walk from Tesco, a grocery store. Every Saturday afternoon the bar would hit a lull between 4 and 5, so I'd get sent to Tesco to pick up fruit, mint and juice for the night. And seemingly every Saturday, some customer in Tesco would come up to me as mistake me for staff. There my work uniform didn't even look similar to the Tesco uniform. I never understood it. The best case of mistaking me for somebody who worked in Tesco was this: a woman came up to me, while I had my hands full of cartons of juice. She started complaining about shitty service and unhelpful staff. I tried telling her that I didn't work there, but she kept cutting me off. Eventually she demanded to speak to my manager. I responded with, oh, you'll have to go to the bar around the corner to speak to the manager. That's where she is. The woman looked shocked for a second, but then said, oh well, that explains why this place is run like a poor excuse for a circus. Your manager is off in a bar, drinking on the job. I should have guessed it. To which I responded, no, I work in that bar and was sent here for stock. If you want to speak to my manager, you can go to my workplace and talk to her. She realized immediately the mistake she had made and became much nicer and very apologetic to me. Story 3. I was at a local computer game store and this elderly gentleman asked me where they put the controllers for PS3. I told him, sorry, I don't work here, so I don't really know. He goes, seriously, why do you even work here if you don't know where anything is? 1010 would go to that store again. Story 4. When I was a teenager I worked in Virgin Records, renamed to Virgin Megastores in the UK now. I had finished my shift and had a pretty shitty day. I was browsing to buy a couple of CDs to cheer myself up. A customer walked up to me and started asking questions. Dealt with customers all day, so I breezily replied, sorry, I don't work here. Customer responds, but you're wearing a Virgin uniform. There was a super awkward pause during which I could easily have set him off duty and about to leave and recovered, but in panic said I just like to wear it and walked out of the store. You know those moments when years later you recall an awkward encounter and just shudder? That's my brain's go-to moment. Story 5. I was at Target right after work. I had on a red polo and khakis and it had my company name embroidered on it that starts with a T. I was doing some networking stuff, so I wasn't wearing my normal dress clothes. I forget what I was buying, but I had my cart full and my purse over my shoulder. A woman asked me where the laundry detergent was. I am used to this, so I just told her that I think it is down a few aisles. This woman lost her ever-loving mind on me, saying that I was a horrible employee. I should know where everything is in my store. I will never be paid above minimum wage because I am so dumb. She wanted my name, my supervisor's name, and the number to corporate. It was after her rant that I politely informed her, ma'am, I don't work here. I was just telling you where I saw it while shopping for my own stuff. She didn't believe me and went to find a manager. I went to the checkout. I guess she found a manager and brought him to where I was checking out, started demanding that he reprimand me. He then informed her that I didn't in fact work there. She was flabbergasted and just walked away. No apology, no nothing. The manager, however, did apologize to me. I told him no problem, not his fault. You can't fix stupid TLDR. I no longer wear red polos to Target. Story 6. Worked at a Petco that was right next to a Best Buy. So same blue shirt and khakis, only different logos. I went over to pick up a game right after work and got sucked into a chat with a guy about picking out a laptop. After 10 minutes of going through the pros cons of various brands, he decides he'd like to get one. I was just like, cool, well good luck with that. Edit. For everyone asking, this was in Moline, Illinois in 2003 to 2004 or so. Story 7. When I was done working and had gotten back to my apartment, still in my mailman clothes, I was stopped by a woman asking me whether or not I had her package. I had to explain to her that I wasn't at work, and that I had been her neighbor the past 2 years. Sorry about the typos on tablet. Story 8. So I'm trying on a pair of jeans at Hollister and it's a big sale, so it's a crowded, smelly, teenage angst mess in the place. I exit the changing room and there's a ton of people waiting, and it's not a big changing room, so it's super crowded. Worker is MIA, so I go over to the shelf thing they put the clothes on you don't want, and it's a mess. The thing was stacked high with clothes, was falling off onto the floor and everywhere, and I feel bad, so I attempt tidy a bit, but it's too far gone and not my job, so I just told the jeans K don't want and go to leave the dressing room when a grade A douchebag mother appears with her mini-me carrying 10 jeans. This woman starts going on and on about how her daughter isn't a 2 or a 4, and why don't they make a size 3, and how come these jeans are ripped. This woman isn't giving me a chance to breathe, but I clearly know she has mistaken me for an employee. I am a young tan somewhat surfer. Why I just let keeping her rant, not really listening to her, waiting to explain myself when she starts picking me apart. She starts saying they should hire workers who have brains that know how to actually help customers, and don't just stand there to look pretty. She finally gives me a chance to speak, but instead of telling her I don't work there, I pretended I was super offended and said I quit. Her daughter looked all embarrassed and people were watching, and you could tell she looked kind of bad, so she started to apologize, and I was just like, no really, I quit, you can work here, and you won't have to worry about looking pretty, and Jay just walked away. Edit. Not even going to edit my awful grammar because it made me laugh. Writing on your iPhone at 4 a.m. embarrassing typos. Story 9 made the mistake of wearing an orange t-shirt to Home Depot. I was approached 4 or 5 times walking back to the lumber section. The funny thing is the expression of confusion and denial on people's faces. I would say, "Oh, I don't work here, just wore the wrong shirt today," and they would stare at me perplexed wondering if I was with them. Story 10 I was on my break, and decided to walk down the mall to the Bon Macy's now. I was wandering around seeing what the sales were, when I was approached by one of those high and mighty, rich. She asked where something was, and I told her I did not work there. She got all huffy and stormed away. I went about my browsing. A few minutes later here she comes again, this time with an actual store employee in tow saying, "That's her. That's the one that won't help me." The employee, actually a department manager, asked me why I was out of my department, and that I knew better than to not help a customer while approached. She then asked what department I was from. Finally a chance to speak, I replied, "I sell shoes, where I was promptly interrupted, and give another tongue lashing. All the while Rich is sitting there with a smirk on her face. Manager told me to get to the office and wait for her. I turned on my heel and walked away towards the exit doors instead. She catches up to me and loudly demands to know if I wanted fired, or if I was going to get to the office. I responded, "I am going to my office." She said there were no offices in that direction and demanded I turn in my name tag and gather my things. I took my name badge off, handed it to while saying, "I don't think my district manager is going to like you firing his top-selling store manager from Kinney Shoes." She looked down at the name badge, and back up to me white as a sheet. Manager hands my badge back, mumbled an apology, and scurried away with her embarrassment and Rich. There is a lesson in this. Take your name badge off when you are on break and go to other stores. Edit a word. Story 11 A couple weeks ago I was at my local PetSmart chatting with the one guy there who really knows his stuff. I have a good deal of experience with aquariums, but I like to run my ideas by other people before I try them out. We are talking, but a customer comes up so he breaks off to assist them. As I'm standing there looking at the fish, an old woman walks up to me and asks about what kind of bowl and food she should get for the goldfish her grandson brought home from the fair. I start to tell her I don't work there, but as I glance around the guy I was talking to and the other employee were still busy. So it went kinda like this, I don't really, the thing is, goldfish actually need a fairly large aquarium, so you should either get at least a 30-gallon setup with this filter and such, or if you don't want to invest that much, I'm sure the store would be more than happy to take it off your hands, and if you'd like a more manageable fish, I would recommend a betta. Now here are some good setups for them, yada yada yada. I finish helping the old woman, and immediately another customer. At this point I notice there is a mini rush as it is around 5-ish and people are stopping by after work. Comes up to me and asks a question about what fish would work well in her son's guppy tank. At this point I'm pretty much committed and I decide to help her too. Eventually after about 25 minutes and several more customers, the crowd thins out and I go back to my conversation with the employee. I ended up helping PetSmart sell several fish and one aquarium that day. TLDR PetSmart customer mistakes me for employee. I assist customers for half hour because I am too awkward to correct her. Story 12 I was in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, a very busy store. I asked the shop owner something, and he just said give me a plastic bag, which I did. I understand Turkish. Then I helped him for a couple of minutes, putting things in bags. I was just trying to help since he was really stressful. He apologized so many times when he realized I wasn't one of his employees, and gave me a discount. Story 13 I'm a bit of a computer whisperer, think DR house, but with Dells instead of dudes. I'm getting rung up at the clothing store one day when the clerk starts button mashing. I ask him what's up and he said the thing was being difficult. I take a quick look at the box and notice the Ethernet cable is unplugged and someone tripped over it, pulling it away from the clusterfuck it was plugged into. I climb underneath the table and am in the process of threading it back up to the box when a manager comes over and says, "Oh, thank God you're here. One of the computers in the back won't start up." Once I get rung up I drop my bag in the car and head to the manager's office, fix that PC, field a couple more questions on my way out from various employees, and as I'm going to leave, a guy goes, "Hey, can we get your card? Corporate IT never responds to our emails." I say I'm not corporate IT and the look on the guy's face was priceless. Story 14 One time my best friend and I were in Walmart digging in the 5 movie bin. We're standing there looking through all these crappy movies hoping to find a gem when this random lady walks up and asks if we work there. I say, "No ma'am, I'm sorry we don't," and we continue digging through the bin. Well, this wasn't good enough for this lady. She stands there and asks us something about finding volleyball equipment. I forget exactly what she was looking for specifically. I ask if she looked through the sporting goods which she was standing right in front of, and she says, "Well yes of course, but I didn't see it. I thought you all would know where it would be." At this point my friend and I are both a little frustrated with the situation. So I tell her that we have no idea where else the volleyball equipment would be at in this store. I ask her if she had gone to Dick's Sporting Goods store. This is when all broke loose. She raises her voice and starts yelling about how she wasn't going to spend that much money and ranting and raving about the cost difference and this and that. My friend and I just looked at each other and walked away. TLDR, lady wants to know where volleyball equipment is in Walmart. Yells at my friend and I neither of us work there for suggesting she look at a dedicated sporting goods store. Story 15 I was in Normandy, France at one of the landing beaches, and some American tourists thought I was a tour guide. Me being the kind of person I am, went along with it and started teaching them about the beach's history, and telling them good places to visit. I had only been there for an hour, but I did know the history rather well. I continued talking them through the landing and taking questions. Then the tour guide turned up. I just laughed and walked away. They thanked me in a confused manner. I don't think it dawned on them at that precise moment that I was a random man and not a tour guide. Story 16. I was at the PX trying to pick out a rotisserie chicken for dinner, when a guy came up to me and began asking where a couple of items were located in the store. Knowing that new people were always incoming, I told him what aisle some of the items were in, but then said I was sorry for not knowing where one or two of them were located. He then got mad at me and said I should know the layout of where I work, and he was about to walk away angrily when I stopped him. I let him know that the people who work at the store wear a certain uniform, and as I wasn't wearing one, I obviously didn't work there. He still seemed mad, and said, well, if you didn't look like a stalker you wouldn't have had to deal with me asking you questions, and then he walked off. Story 17. Finally, a place to share my stories. When I was younger, around 14, I used to go shopping with my mother, as I'm sure lots of people do. She told me to wait outside a store while she quickly went in, and I coincidentally was wearing a similar outfit to the store clerk's blue top, gray pants jeans. An older woman walked toward me and practically yelled out that she had gone online, and found a product she wanted, and demanded that I take her to it. I politely said that I didn't work there, and that was the end of it. Right, wrong. She claimed that I had to work there, I was wearing the uniform. I tried to argue otherwise, but she just insisted that I work there and that she'll tell my manager. Eventually my mum returned and we both left, but I still feel with rage at the thought of this woman. Story 18. My brother was at Best Buy, and was mistaken for an employee because he was wearing a blue shirt. The first time someone asked him where something was, he politely told them he didn't work there, but he did tell them where the product was. The second time this happened, he thought he'd have some fun and pretty much had this guy following him all around the store looking for something. My brother had no clue where it was. The guy eventually asked, "Do you even work here?" My brother simply replied, "Nope." The guy stormed out of the store so fast. My brother just went back to what he was doing. Story 19. A little backstory. First, when I was about 11 years old, I went with my family to the Philadelphia Zoo. It was about 80 degrees out and little me decided to wear a hoodie for some reason. Of course I get too hot and need to take it off, but I forgot to wear a shirt underneath, so my parents bought me a shirt that said Philadelphia Zoo on it. So my family and I are walking around the gift shop right before we are about to leave. Little me is checking out some sweet stuffed animals when a middle-aged woman comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder. "Excuse me," she says, "where can I find sunscreen?" I was kind of confused when she asked me, but I was happy to help since she asked politely. I quickly looked around and saw some non-souvenirs behind the counter. Guessing you can find it at the counter over there," I said. Then this woman gave me a look like she wasn't sure if I was intelligent or not. "So you're just guessing," she says. The way she said it made me realize something was off, but I didn't make the connection. Remember, I am 11 years old. Yeah, I mean there are batteries and stuff back there, so there should be sunscreen. Then she gave me a quick smile and said, "Okay, thank you for your help." I didn't have a clue what had happened until I told my dad what happened as we were leaving. He started laughing and pointed out I was wearing the Philadelphia Zoo shirt, and this broad thought I had worked there. Story 20. I was browsing movies at HMV when a lady came up to me and asked if I had Star Wars on Blu-ray. I was like, "Yeah, of course, they're my favorites." Then she asks where they are. At my house. That's when I realized she thought I worked there and wasn't just wanting to talk about Star Wars. Story 21. At a coffee shop I used to camp at, they kept the keys to the bathroom right near the bathroom door. People would sometimes miss them, try the door, and think the bathroom was occupied. When I noticed that happen, I would try to get their attention and point them to the keys. One time a black woman, this is relevant, tries the door and I, a white guy, can't catch her eye until she's walked back across the shop. At that point I do catch her eye and point to the bathroom, point to the key, and make a key turning motion. This had worked in the past with other patrons, but this woman looks at me furiously. I don't know why, so I repeat the process. She yells, "I don't work here," at which point I realize that she thinks that I'm telling her to go clean the bathroom. Story 22. I was on a walk with my GF. A few years ago, since it was getting dark, we turned home, through a not-so-good place in town, namely the place where the prostitutes wait for their johns. I walked into the bushes to pee, and in this 2 minutes some guys stopped next to my girlfriend and asked her if she would like to get into their car. To my luck, she didn't work there, and told me horrified but laughing of it. When I exited the bushes, I had to console her with, "Hey, at least they thought you the prettiest." Not sure if it helped. Story 23. I was at dinner in a decent restaurant in LA. I was wearing a suit but had taken my jacket off and wasn't wearing a tie, so it was black shoes, pants, and a white shirt. I went to the bathroom and was passing this table, and this guy grabbed my arm as I was walking past and said, "Sorry, could you find out where our wine is? We asked you ages ago." At this point I hadn't realized I resembled the staff in this place and was a bit shell-shocked, so I said sure and went for a. On my way back I thought I'd be a dutiful human being and go tell the barman, as it was on my way, that this guy hadn't had his wine. The barman slapped his forehead and said hang on and gave me glass of white to take to him, which I did and apologized for the delay, and the guy appreciated it too. Then I sat down and went on with my dinner. Story 24. While at my aunt's funeral, was wearing my black suite, hair was looking presentable but my shoes were 2 different sizes and brands. Apparently, I looked like I worked at that funeral home, probably because I was standing off to the side because I only knew 3 out of the 50 people there including my aunt. Anyway, I was asked at least twice if I worked there. Where is this? By who else? Family members I had never met. They thought it was funny after I told them. I still don't know who they are. Story 25. I work at a KFC near a large shopping center, so after shift, I decided to go shopping. Any shop I went into that is known for red colors. I was asked to help multiple people. Come on, can you not see the hat and flour all over my pants? Story 26. I was filling my truck with gas at the station when I was about 21. This in his 40s pulls up, waits about a minute before saying, "So do you only do one vehicle at a time? Come on, fill the up." I proceeded to apologize and started filling his Cummins diesel with gasoline. He ended up trying to call the cops, but they couldn't do anything as I played stupid lol. Story 27. Around Christmas time, I was on my lunch hour in my uniform picking up some Christmas stuff. I was in a card shop and this man in his 60s hit me over the head with a wrapping paper roll as a joke before apologizing profusely on realizing I was a customer there. Having said that, I don't know why that would ever be considered a thing to do to someone who you don't know, whether they work there or not. I never resolved it. I was 16 and awkward. Story 28. I had the opposite one company 3 offices in various parts of the country. For a client event we were bussed out to a countryside retreat so that we could act as hosts. Mostly we'd be there to set things up, stop them getting drunk, and make sure they didn't run off with the silverware. As the only person going from my office, I get there 3 hours before the event is due to start and wander into the room we booked, which was filled with cardboard boxes and props being set up. I'm wearing my pre-event let's hang some decorations outfit, and of course I ask where they want me to start. Someone comes over to me oozing with enthusiasm but guiding me to the door. She tells me all about dinner later on, about the hotel we're at, how nice it would be to take a long walk in the grounds or maybe hang out in the lounge for a few hours. I'm a little confused because they seem to be trying to get rid of me and I keep going yeah, but surely there's loads of work I can help with. It's only 10 minutes later when I'm clearly not leaving. She asks if I brought a +1. She thinks I'm a stray, early, jogging bottom-clad client. Story 29. That last time I went to visit my grandmother at her retirement home, she told me you already came and cleaned the kitchen but you forgot my laundry. She has dementia and doesn't form new memories. She thinks I'm 12 still. I'm 27. Story 30. Mine isn't exactly working in the traditional sense. Once while I was in college I was meeting a friend for lunch at Chipotle after class. Because of the way you order at Chipotle, I figured it would be better to just wait outside for him to get there. His class ended up running a little long so I was just standing outside for a good 15 or 20 minutes. Eventually this urban-looking fellow comes up to me from the bus stop across the street and asks, "Hey man, you got any bags I can get off you?" At first I thought that was a strange question, then I processed that he was looking for drugs. I just said sorry man, I can't help you and he went on his way. That was a strange experience to say the least. TLDR I was mistaken for a drug dealer while waiting for a friend outside a Chipotle in the city. Story 31. I was walking from the pharmacy in the back of the store towards the front. An old guy stops and asks where do you stock the mouthwash. I was about to say I don't work here, then I figured it's Walgreens, it's like 7 short aisles, I could find mouthwash. Come with me, we found the mouthwash. I'm also awesome helping old ladies get products off the top shelf. Story 32. Once I was at Walmart pretty late at night, around 11. I think I was looking for cold medicine or something like that. Anyway, a woman who looks to be in her late 30s and 20 comes up to me and shows me her child's school supply list, asking if I can help her find some portfolio folder or something. I was about to tell her that I didn't work there when I saw her daughter, who looked to be around 7 or 8, in one of the aisles peeking out and looking tired and a little nervous. I know how Walmart can be in terms of finding an employee to help you, so I decided to just stick around and help them find everything on the list. I realized that neither of them spoke very much English, which made some of the items on the lists confusing. It took a good 20 minutes but they were both really grateful and nice. I guess it's not really an awkward story like you asked for, but still a story. TLDR helped a non-English speaking woman and her daughter find school supplies at Walmart even though I don't work there. Story 33. Many moons ago, I was finishing out the final build out of a restaurant which I eventually became GM and exec sous of. It was set to open a week prior, but due to the county dragging its own permits, final inspections etc., it was delayed by almost a full month. It is 8:30 p.m. If you were to peer into the restaurant, it was plainly obvious that it was not ready for business. Booths half assembled, kitchen and bar equipment in the dining room, boxes and boxes of stuff. This guy comes into the restaurant. I am 20 up on a huge ladder installing in-ceiling speakers when he starts shouting, cursing, and making threats. He is pissed that the restaurant both did not call to confirm his reso, and 2 that the restaurant clearly was not open for business. I and my coworker let him know that we are just contractors and have no idea about anything about the restaurant. We're just here to install AV equipment, sorry bro. He then kicks a flat screen TV box and makes it evident that he's out for blood so to speak. He starts kicking empty boxes, throwing things. My coworker calls 911 and tells the guy to leave. He refuses. He demands to speak with the owner of the restaurant. We tell him that we cannot help him. He continues shouting, yelling, cursing, etc. At this point I decide to come off the ladder as I do not want him pushing me to the ground. As I am coming down, he gets louder and more aggressive. I jump and rotate around to get to the ground from about 4 up. He sees my shirt flare up just enough to see my handgun on my hip IWB. His eyes lock onto my hip, and he shuts the up immediately. At this point, about 4 minutes has passed. I told him that he has to get the out now. My coworker confirms that the cops are on their way and will be there in less than 60 seconds. He hightails it to his car. My coworker gives 911 his plate number and a few seconds later, 3 cop cars arrive. Charges are not pressed. He is given a warning not to come near the restaurant while it is still under construction. Cop asks me about my gun, I show it to him, which leads to about a 20-minute conversation on the differences in my gun Glock 26 and his SIG. I do not remember what he carried. That was a strange night. To preempt the inevitable question as to why I carried. This restaurant was in the nice part of town where it more or less met the not-so-nice part of town. I am in an empty building with one other guy, with easy-to-move, boxed kitchen equipment valued at like $80K, with another $40K in spooled copper wiring, flat-screen TVs, speakers, etc. I do not give about the stuff. I do care about my life and someone being stupid. My coworker carried as well. Story 34. Not awkward but helpful. I notice every helper in this store was ignoring this elderly lady. I happened to be wearing the same color of shirt and she came up to me for help. I happily helped her and even helped her go up to the checkout lane. Tells me I'm a good employee and will write a nice letter to the company about me. Story 35. A couple years ago, I was in the electronic department of Walmart helping my mom find a decent Blu-ray player to give to my grandma as a gift. When I was standing there looking at the options, this older Asian woman asked me if I could help her find an MP3 player that she could buy for her daughter. It was around Christmas. I told her that I didn't work there and she said, "Oh, well, you young guys know everything about these anyway." My mother and I laughed, and I changed her mind from getting a no-name like 2 gig MP3 player to getting an actual iPod, and I think I saved one kid from being kind of disappointed on Christmas. Story 36. I work as a mechanic, and part of my job is to collect parts if our suppliers are busy. I was sent down to a wrecking yard to pick up a second-hand transmission, and because I was in my work overalls, some guy asked me pretty rudely where all the rims are kept. I just rolled with it and said something pretty vague along the lines of "not exactly sure, out by the front fence I think." My answer clearly wasn't specific enough because I heard him mumble under his "how hard can your job be?" He must have felt like such a head when he joined the lineup right as I was paying for the trans and leaving. Story 37. This is what being able to multiply numbers in your head gets you. My Grams and I were at Kmart getting grass seed in the garden department, and she tells me that one of the bags she got wasn't the right type of seed. Of course, I take it back and start looking for the right one. I stop to check to make sure I was getting the right one, and suddenly I hear, "How much lawn does that bag of seed cover?" Without thinking, I multiply the dimensions on the bag in my head and rattle off the answer. Then I hear, "Well, if my yard is XFT by YFT, will that bag cover it?" I do the mental math and turn to her to let her know that yes, the seed would cover her lawn, and I notice another woman standing behind us. New woman says, "Oh, I had a question, but it'll wait until you're done helping her." I just gave a casual laugh, grabbed the bag of seed I needed, and kindly inform her that I didn't work there. Funny thing was, I was wearing a yellow shirt and shorts, not really Kmart uniform. Story 38. I've worked retail for 5 years, since I was 18. Well, now I work for a company that wears red shirts and black pants, not Target. Anyways, I went into a Walmart for the first time in a year because I needed specific sunglasses that I could only find at Walmart. While I was browsing, someone comes up to me and asks if I know where whatever item is. I turn around and tell them I don't work here, but you should try whatever aisle and see if you find it there. I mean, I'm wearing a red shirt, what makes you think I work here? Story 39. I was doing training for a job in Costa Coffee in a busy train station, and around 1200 it gets pretty clustered with people due to trains leaving and entering the station. Anyway, I was dressed in the company uniform and the manager gave me his apron to wear while he went off to do other business. Meanwhile, there's me standing there behind the till at Costa Coffee wearing a manager's uniform. People rushing in and out but wanted me to take their order and make their beverage before their train departed. I just stood there dressed in manager's clothing with a badge that says manager on it, trying to tell people that sorry I don't work here. I got a lot of people pissed with me in such a short time and he was gone for a while. TLDR, dressed like the manager at a coffee shop, only person there at the time. People were pissed at me and some missed their train. Story 40. The dress code for the company I worked for was this black pullover and the standard dress shoes trousers. I usually walk up to Asta Walmart for lunch and stood for about 5 minutes deciding which sweet chocolate I should get. As I'm looking, I get a tap on the shoulder. There is a woman standing there and she begins shouting at me, "I have been standing here asking you for help for 5 minutes." I give her a weird look and she realizes I don't work at Asda and she gets embarrassed and walks away. As I'm walking to the till, I notice someone who actually worked at Asda is kind of the same attire, except they have Asda in big green letters over their jumper. Story 41. I actually said that at the gym. I still don't get it. I'm visibly overweight and I had been lifting for only 3 months, topping at a 150-pound squat. I'm not visibly muscular in the slightest. Well, at least I did feel important for 5 minutes. Story 42. My buds and I had just landed, hadn't changed out of our flight suits yet, we're military pilots. As we walked through the hotel to get to our rooms, we accidentally passed a wedding party. A pair of beautiful women stopped us and asked if we were the strippers. My buddy said, completely deadpan, "We can be." Story 43. I worked a job at Sears when I was in high school. We only had one car, so my mom let me drop her off at work at Kroger and pick her back up at night after her shift. I arrived 20 minutes before the end of my mom's shift as cashier, so I was just wandering down the frozen food aisle still dressed in my work clothes when this little old lady approached me looking for frozen pot pies. I didn't have the heart to tell her that I didn't work there, so I just found her the pot pies and placed them in her cart. Then she proceeded to ask me where a bunch of other stuff was. I eventually had pretty much become this lad's personal shopper because most of what she wanted was on the top shelves and she couldn't reach. When she got to checkout, she took my mom's lane and she goes, "That young man that works here is a very kind man and a very hard worker, you should give him a raise." And my mom looked very confused. She said, "Ma'am, there aren't any men working this evening, there are only the ladies left to close up the store." Then I came walking up with a frozen pizza tombstone, of course, and the little old lady said, "This is the young man." My mom chuckled and said, "That's my son, and he doesn't even work here." And then my mom winked at me, and of course the whole ride home talked about how she raised me well and blah blah blah, overly proud mom stuff.